going to call to order the November 15th meeting, Maidencreek Township Board of Supervisors. This is a budget meeting, and there are a few other items that are listed on the agenda. So I'm going to ask everybody to rise first for a pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and I guess we'll start off with an approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second it.
On agreement?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I guess we're going to start off with public comment. Any public comment on the agenda items? Aisle number 1, aisle number 2, aisle number 3, aisle number 4, number 5, and number 6. Okay, Mr. Voorhees, do you want to just come on up?
Charles Voorhees,
And your address, please.
284 West Walnut Tree Drive. In reference to the resignation of township manager, is there a reasoning behind Hunter is resigning?
Well, first of all, we haven't even got to that yet, so, but he has another job.
So was there any reason why this township wouldn't consider rehiring him?
Well, I don't know that that's something that we're ready to discuss at this point.
When would you be ready to?
Well, when we're ready to know who we are going to put in. We've got some ideas. I'll say that, there's nothing to writing at this point, but, you know, Hunter's job is a year-to-year job.
I understand that, I know it's in the records.
Right.
And I do think we want to tread lightly on the any personnel
Yeah,
issues.
so it's a personnel issue also, so we have to be careful of how we discuss it in public.
So any personnel in the future is not to be discussed publicly, or?
Well, we're going to discuss it when we hire somebody, of course. That
Okay.
we'll have to do anyway. But Hunter has found another job, and I think he's anxiously awaiting his move to that job because it's going to give him some opportunities. And we wish him the best of luck. When he started here, he told us that he may only be here 5 years, and his whole goals were to get back toward the extra area, and that's where he's going. So,
Oh, I appreciate the comment, thank you.
thank you.
What I do want to add a few things. I think Hunter did work really hard for the year and a half that he was here. He did get the township in a better position than what it was, but I think there was some unfair politics that caused him to seek employment other places, and I think it's a loss to the township, especially at this point where we have a number of different financial issues before us, including more difficult budget times, and we're in a difficult economic climate. I mean, as everybody knows, interest rates are probably at 20-year highs. We have political unrest throughout the world and issues like that. But so I do appreciate the work that he's done for us for the past year and a half. So thank you, Hunter, on that. I think it's also important that we continue the position as a full-time position, and I think it's important that we have a transition while he is here before he takes his new job, so that we do have a smoother transition as far as moving forward in our financing, in our projects, in our management of this township, because the township manager ordinance, per our ordinances in Maidencreek Township, have 30 different responsibilities for the township manager, and that's quite a bit, including the day-to-day responsibility of the finances, the supervision of the employees, responding to all the needs of the township. And just like we had this year with a 1,000-year flood in July, the consequences of somewhat disastrous events for a lot of people. A lot of people did have major damage. We suffered a lot of damage through our infrastructure. And so there's a lot of responsibilities that we need somebody here in this relatively small office on a full-time basis to make sure those issues are taken care of. And I feel very strongly that we should hire an interim manager so that we have a good transition going into next year. That's all I have to say about that.
Anybody else in aisle 6?
The last row?
It's public comment time.
Yeah, if you want to comment.
Should I just stand here, or,
That's fine, just
okay.
tell us your name and address.
Carol Ann Donahoe, 101 Spirit Court, and I have a couple things that I wanted to say. First off, I also want to thank Hunter for doing a great job during this time. I haven't been very active in the township, but in the time that I've been active with the conditional use hearings, he's been nothing but professional and easygoing, and I appreciate that. And I just wanted to say that I was not at the recent Board of Supervisors meeting, but I did see the video on YouTube, and I found it to be very concerning. I feel that there are a lot of things going on that are not open to the public. I feel that there are personal agendas that are being pursued rather than representing the people of this township, all of the people of this township. And I have one question. There was a discussion about sharing township managers with Greenwich Township. And I wanted to know that when those discussions were had, was there an opening for that position?
No, it wasn't.
Is that not an opening?
To my knowledge, Eric Fry did reach out just to have a conversation, but there was no agreement, no,
I didn't ask whether there was an agreement. I asked whether there was an opening for that job.
I do not know. I would have to defer to my partner on that. And I don't think Dave, unless.
The only thing I can say is, when a new board comes in, they're permitted to do what they do to get the people in place that they want in place. At the end of this year, there's gonna be a new supervisor taking over, and
Has the new board come in yet?
not yet.
Did the new board come in when these conversations started?
Nope,
So the new board is not in until January, is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay. So again, I just wanted to say that witnessing what I saw in that video and the actions, and it's not the first time I've seen these videos and seen how you all behave, but I want to say, you represent all of us. I don't care what's happened in the past. I'm not knowledgeable of what's happened in the past, but you represent every single one of us, and you should respect that. And it would be comical if you did not have so much influence over our way of life and our property values. Thank you.
Anybody else in aisle 6?
Dave, let me just say quick, thank you for your compliment.
You're welcome, Hunter. I'm sorry that you had to hear things the way you did. That was very disturbing as well.
And I think we've apologized to him as well.
Well, I
There's
should
no
hope so.
reason that that should have come up in a meeting at all. Personnel matters don't come up at meetings like that all of a sudden.
Well, I mean, it seems to me it was from an agenda from a different township, so apparently they're talking about it at their meeting.
Well, and this I've got to say, when you start working, you think the president waits till year 1 when he walks in office? to
I'm
pick
not
his-
talking about the president, and we are not the United States. We are Maidencreek Township.
You're right.
And there are certain rules
So you want us
that
to
should be
wait till the
followed.
end and say, oh, we need somebody tomorrow?
Well, for the record, if
I
I could
don't
just.
know, I don't know the hiring practices. I don't know what the rules are. So all I know is, it seems to me that not everyone who is currently a supervisor took part in those discussions. It seems to me that this is something that has been desired for a while by certain supervisors. And it seems to me that it's not something that's been out in the open.
Well, it was out in the open a year and a half ago, when it wasn't the desire of all the supervisors to get rid of another manager.
I said, I don't care.
Okay, but that's coming back up again, so it cares to
Okay,
us.
well then, that's something you all are gonna have to deal with.
We are.
Because you're grown-ups and you need to run this community.
That's right, and we're going to.
And to
You know,
address
it
the-
wasn't fair what happened then.
I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about this last meeting that I just saw, where I saw Hunter having to hear that his job was he was being replaced in his job when I saw that 2 out of the 3 supervisors were having discussions about something when there's a 3rd supervisor still on board, a duly elected 3rd supervisor.
And that supervisor is not gonna be on board in January, so you work on your management procedures with the new supervisor oncoming
I'm
before,
just expressing my concern
okay?
about what I saw. I do not want an explanation. I want to see action that represents all residents of this township.
Okay.
And I'm done.
I do have one comment on that. I think the solicitor can confirm that, as you referred, Ms. Donahue, to the current Board of Supervisors, that it's the sitting Board of Supervisors that is supposed to take place, have meetings, whether they're executive sessions or public meetings with the current board. Is that correct?
I'm gonna withhold any comment on that. I'm gonna defer to my partner here. I don't believe there was any actual discussions regarding that, but again, I'd like to defer to him. I don't wanna speak for him,
Well,
okay?
okay. According to the
It appears that
record,
there are enough
they-
discussions that. the
Again, I
English
wasn't
town-
there, so I'm not gonna speak to it, okay?
Okay.
Just
Nor-
like there
nor did
weren't
I-
any with
no.
Joe
All right.
Farley.
There were
We'll
enough
find, we'll find.
discussions that Greenwich
There were none with
Township
Joe
had
Farley either, were there?
on their agenda to have an intergovernmental agreement. And I
But
also
they haven't
just would
approved
like
that.
to second what I believe
We should just-
well, I have a comment.
Supervisor Fiedler just was talking about, is that there's, I don't understand how this person is gonna have a full-time, currently she's full-time at Greenwich Township, right?
I don't know what's happening with it. We have not discussed anything.
Okay, so again, then I will say, I do not see how this can be a part-time position. And if it could be a part-time position, how was it able to be a full-time position all those years?
And if I could address a few things that you brought up. One of them was that we didn't have a vacancy until Hunter actually submitted his resignation, which I believe is dated, well, we received as a board on Monday of this week, so there was no vacancy until that time. And at the last meeting, Mr. Frank, you did admit that there was a meeting between the two of you.
I
and
didn't say there was a
apparently
meeting, there was a phone call.
what?
between
Let
the
me
two
just-
of you, well, I mean,
Not
let's finish
between the
that.
two of us.
Well, you said that there was a discussion, I wasn't part of it, it was
You're right.
apparently executive session, and it had to deal with.
So who made the
both
decision to get rid
manager
of Diane
and
all of a sudden in
the
one
issues
meeting
of
that
going
I
to
wasn't
another-
aware
this
of?
is going to
I didn't
like
go to the
another
Heidi-
township on
I didn't
this
go to the
issue.
Heidi Fiedler school law.
Hold on.
That's
School
not
of government.
being
What
told.
I
Okay,
am
everybody,
referring
let's
to-
calm down, let's take a minute, okay?
Yes.
We have the public here.
That's
and We're
right.
gonna do our budget meeting, okay, and move on.
Yes.
I
and that is
think
another
you've had
thing.
your 3 minutes of speaking, and that was very respectfully,
And
Carol.
that is fine, but they started up again, and I'm
Yes.
just saying,
That
that has
doesn't-
got to stop.
Okay, thank you very much, Carol, for your comment, Mr. Voorhees. I think we should move on
Yes.
together, okay?
Okay, we're gonna go on to
Could I
the,
add something before we move on?
Go ahead, Mr. Voorhees.
There's a hiring procedure throughout the state of Pennsylvania as well. And there's a number of things that come underneath the Sunshine Act. Now, what I'm witnessing here, as Carol Ann has stated, procedures. Are there lack of procedures, or are the procedures being overseen to fill a position when the public's not aware? So my comment would be that the public needs to be kept transparent. And I will tell you this, that man sitting there was the most transparent thing that came to this township since it's been running. And I think he's been burned for it. That's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Voorhees.
thank you. Presentation by PFM. Gentlemen, we're sorry about that.
I'll be relatively brief for my part of it. Frankly, everything that I have here was discussed at the meeting last week.
Right.
Main difference being the cover changing and interest rate chart changing. So for tonight's discussion, and on your agenda for tonight is consideration of an ordinance called a parameters ordinance that Peter Edelman from Stevens and Lee has prepared, and your solicitor, other than you,
Yes.
reviewed on behalf of the township. This is related to a potential future financing tied to infrastructure needs of the township. The parameters ordinance will be asked to be considered that will allow for a future financing to occur in as early as 2024. That includes a number of overall projects on the infrastructure side. It has a maximum annual interest rate tied to this, a maximum principal amount, a final maturity. All of those things are the same as they were last week. The plan here would be, should the board move forward with the parameters ordinance, our team would work toward a financing that would occur sometime in 2024. The timing of which has not been finalized at this point, but this would be the legal action necessary to allow us to move forward with the process, with the ultimate interest rates locked in at a future date. All the legal side, DCD rules that are tied to this, all fit within the standards of the Local Government Debt Act, and that's the consideration for tonight. I'm happy to run through any of the analysis again, but it's the same as it was a couple of days ago. Really, I'd like to see if there's any questions on the ordinance
Well,
itself.
if I could just interject,
Sure.
for the benefit of people who weren't here last week, which you go over what the maximum rates could be, I think it would benefit people in the audience.
Sure.
To
Yeah,
understand what that
so
is.
the way the max parameters work is we establish a rate of 7%, which is based on a coupon rate, which is under the state guidelines, is what is the basis for the maximum. So conceivably, that, not the yield, it's the couponing that matters here. So what we just issued for the authority a couple of days ago is we locked in a rate at 4.63%. Should there be a higher coupon than 7%, it won't work. So we have to establish something higher than we expect to occur to make sure it fits within the standards of the Local Government Debt Act, since we're not going to be issuing debt until the future. So we establish a maximum rate, a maximum borrowing amount. In this case, it's over $6 million, but as we're talking about here, we're going to back into approximately $5 million for capital projects. Those things allow us to do what we can do in the future. Our expectation, per the current analysis, would be if you chose and issued the debt with some estimated interest rates, we believe the payments would be approximately $410,000 per year, starting in 2026. Prior to that, there'd be some stub payments up front. So there'd be the initial interest-only period that could be estimated at approximately $180,000, and then in 2025, it increases a little bit to about $300,000, and then the full run rate around $410,000 per year. Those payments would be made over a 20-year period. That's the estimate at this point in time. So that's really the backdrop behind this. Obviously, you're talking about your budget tonight, which kind of goes hand in hand here, because ultimately, these debt service payments will be something that will need to be paid for over that period of time. So the considerations of the supervisors to cover those payments is quite important. So my 2 cents is, if you're going to do the projects, you make the decisions to cover the debt service going forward. So they're kind of a hand-in-hand conversation. Because the backing of this is the general obligation, tax and power of the township. Any other questions? I'm happy to go into some more details, but that's generally the main crux of the conversation is this is really a legal action, an approval, and then there'll be the real steps to kind of get us to the market, which will take, a couple months. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm not going anywhere. Peter can certainly talk about the ordinance itself.
Yeah, let me just give you a quick summary of the ordinance. The process generally, as Jamie mentioned, this process is in compliance with the Pennsylvania Local Government Unit Debt Act. The ordinance before the Board of Supervisors tonight has been prepared in compliance with the Debt Act, and it really takes all official action that's required by the board to authorize the issuance of the bonds. The process that Jamie mentioned, which is outlined in the Debt Act, is really an oversight by the Department of Community and Economic Development. They are going to review the ordinance and the proceedings that we'll file on behalf of the township to make sure that everything's done in compliance with state law. By adopting this parameters ordinance, you really initiate that process. There's a second legal advertisement that'll be placed in the paper, but then proceedings will be filed with the state. They then have a 20-day time frame to review those proceedings to make sure they're done properly. If everything looks good to them, they'll issue a stamp of approval. You can't issue bonds without that approval from the state. But like I said, this is a process that gets that time clock ticking, which then allows the financial advisors to prepare an offering document, get a rating for the township, which should be fairly simple since that was just done for the authorities bonds. You know, get the marketing materials prepared while this review process with the state carries on. So keys to the ordinance, one Jamie mentioned, the township is pledging its full faith, credit, and taxing power in support of the payment of principal and interest on the bonds. That's what the bondholder's looking for. They understand that you have that taxing power, which is very powerful. In the ordinance, you will covenant to budget each year, appropriate the necessary monies each year, and make the payments on the bonds. Those two key things are outlined in the ordinance and follow the outline that's provided by the Local Government Unit Debt Act. So we established the parameters in the ordinance as well and provide the process by which, once the bonds are sold, you'll sign a bond purchase agreement with the ultimate buyer of the bonds. That process of identifying the buyer will be handled by your financial advisor. You doing a competitive process here?
We'll probably do a hybrid again.
Yeah. Which, you know, ensures that the township's getting the best rates possible. So those are really the keys of the ordinance. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions you might have regarding the ordinance, the process, the Commonwealth review.
Not about the ordinance, what was the, you said the water authority's rate was 4.6?
4.63. That was the average interest rate on bonds. And that was for 25 years.
25.
So,
And to qualify that, Jamie, that was based on the township's
credit
creditworthiness.
rating. That's correct. Yes, because of the guarantee, we were considering a Standard & Poor's A+, and we would expect we would go through the process again, we'd fall in a similar fashion.
So they can't use the credit rating that we took as a result?
They technically can't use the same one, but they're gonna be, they will be reviewing it again. It'll be more efficient if we do it quicker, because they
Right.
obviously just reviewed it.
But with it being 20 years instead of 25, in theory, it could be a little bit less.
That's correct. That's correct. Under today's market interest rates.
Gotcha.
Correct.
And I think also Jamie had mentioned at the last meeting, and I provided the board via email copies of the policies that they were talking about.
Right.
Those are really ready to go. I think that you could probably indicate your desire to put them in a resolution to be approved at the December meeting. In theory, I think you could approve them tonight, but I didn't prepare them to be on the agenda for this evening. And it's probably better to adopt those policies by resolution, but those resolutions can be ready for December if you want to go forward with them. The biggest category or requirement that's in that is that we maintain a fund balance of 15% moving forward with the debt, or with the fund balance policy. So that's going to be the biggest obligation. If we're below that, I think it's a 2-year process to
Get
move
yourself
back.
back to.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit more when you say maintain a 15%?
Yeah, so does that standard come from GASB or is that GFOA?
It's GFOA.
Okay.
And the decision on what percentage you use is partly tied to the plan of what we think and want the credit rating to be in the future. Because as part of the credit rating process, there are certain categories tied to the issuers and the ratings itself. So some places that are AAA may have a 75% fund balance. And again, it's not all about fund balance, but it matters when you're deliberating a credit rating.
So if I can just back up.
Sure.
When you say fund balance, you're talking about cash on hand? Or like
I'm
rainy
talking
day fund,
about,
or-
I'm talking about, yeah, it's talking about the funds that are tied to your audit that say, you know, committed or uncommitted fund balance.
Yeah, and the 15% is the equivalent to your expenses for that year. So if we have $4 million, okay, if we have $1 million in expenses, I need to make it easy for myself. You would have a $150,000 fund balance that you need to maintain throughout the
Okay,
year.
all right.
Yeah.
So obviously, the goal would be that as you go through your process of budgeting, you're using your policies as a backdrop for how you make your decisions. You obviously want to be above those if you can, but the minimum is established as part of this process. For purposes of how the rating agencies consider that, they're good governance for purposes of that standard related to the management side of how their credit is reviewed. So not all municipalities have policies like this created. Some, you know, larger entities certainly have them. municipalities of this size, especially when you're issuing debt for the first time in a long time, this is the time you should consider it. So it works quite well with the timing that we're considering. And it can, in the future, positively impact your credit rating potential. So we think it's worthwhile. But it doesn't have to happen tonight, as Hunter said.
We do have to agree to the advertisement though tonight.
So we've done the advertising necessary
Yes.
for this ordinance. So for
Okay.
tonight's consideration, there is an ordinance prepared.
Yeah,
So we've done all of that. So this, for tonight's consideration, is
the ordinance.
the ordinance itself.
For the policies, you can do them whenever. They
Right.
just should
Yeah, I'm
be
sorry,
adopted by
I
resolution.
didn't put two and two together, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not,
It's just,
yeah.
the
Yeah,
ordinance to me,
and
it's not
Eric's
to
looked at that
take the
already,
loan out,
so-
yeah.
Okay. So how do we feel about moving forward with the ordinance? Any discussion?
I have some concerns. One is that we're at a 20-year high in interest rates. This is quite a bit of debt. We're talking up to $6.6 million. Some of it's not completely well-defined, and I think it's putting a lot of responsibility and burden on taxpayers. So it looks like our tax rate will probably effectively double for the real estate taxes. And I'm concerned about the burden that we'll put on our homeowners. We have a number of people who are on fixed incomes who are retired, and I don't think this is a good time to actually move forward with something like this.
If I may jump in real quick, Heidi, I don't disagree with your contention because those are valid concerns. I will say that the tax situation, I think that's presented in this budget, is reflective of where the fund balance is for the township and where our current expense commitments are. And while it definitely would be affected by borrowing in the future, what you're seeing reflected in the budget for why there is a tax increase proposed is really because of the long-term financial obligations that the board has agreed to. You can change them at any time, of course.
Well, right, and so adopting this ordinance would increase the financial obligations of
That's
this
fair.
township.
Sure.
And you would need to double the tax rate in order to pay for this going into the future, increased. Well, you're gonna have to have.
I take your point. I take your point. I
Well,
don't want to quibble about
No, I'm
the
not, well,
specific
we're not
numbers,
into the
but-
budget itself, but
Sure.
I mean, you're talking about payments that are gonna be $400 and some thousand a year.
potential.
Or, we don't know the exact number, maybe 500,000 a year. And I think at this point that it's not warranted. We're talking about interest rates that are, I think they're even over 20-year highs right now.
Interest
Well-
rates over the long term, were near historic lows within the last decade or so.
Mhm.
When you look at historic averages, we're about average of what we've been at when you go back several years. So yes, it's not the all-time lows, and I would say that we are in a reasonable window. If you can borrow 20 years at 4.63 or 4.75%, that's a reasonable interest rate to
Yeah.
cover.
Well, I looked it up myself, and I found that the last time we had the Fed rate, where it is right now, was in 2001. So this is 2023, that's over 20 years ago.
It's-
So we're talking about even a longer time period, and I think we're talking about a lot of political instability, financial instability, a lot of inflation, and I don't think this is the time to do this.
Yeah, it's just, it's capital projects. decided
No,
to do them.
I totally understand. I'm talking about the finances of it
Yeah.
at this point, and, you know, we just guaranteed the water authority's projects and their bond, so I will be supporting this tonight.
The one thing we're looking at is, quite honestly, some of the plans were as a result of your comments, Heidi. So if we're not gonna be doing this, it's not a problem. We just take the streams off the, off our budget, we take the roads off our budget, because we're not gonna be able to come up with the money to do them. We're not gonna be able to get the equipment that's necessary right now, which means we put sometimes personnel in jeopardy and things like that. So that's why we came to this conclusion now, and that's what we were looking forward to.
I'm glad you want to make it a personal issue again.
It's not a personal
Well, you're
issue.
saying based on other things. No, I support our roads being taken care of.
But how do you do that with
Yeah.
the
No,
money?
but, no, but
I
the
got
point of
that
it
question,
is
is where
that
do you pay for that? So if you
there's
don't
certain
wanna do
things,
it,
well,
what's your
okay,
option?
I'll address
I'm
some of these,
asking.
yeah, because some of the things you have listed here, you have $2 million here, under this, summary of projects. One is a new municipal building, construction. There's 5 things listed here, including a new salt shed. That's $2 million. out of the approximately $5 million bond, that's a big chunk there. There's other equipment here. I haven't committed to any of this equipment. We have bought new things over the years, but there you go.
If I can just add, the bond proceeds are not intended to purchase every single thing on here. They're to reflect the broad variety that the board feedback has been provided to me about priorities that you guys have. And part of the obligation, I think, that we wanted to make sure was listed in the bond ordinance was to ensure that you had the flexibility in the future to move to some of these projects. Because I think staff's recommendation to look at this, based on where the board discussions have developed over the fall, have been to ensure that you have the finances to do some of this capital work. If you want to take those capital projects off, of course, that's the board's right. But I do want to emphasize that there are no firm plans to build a new municipal building or anything along those lines. But that is one of the opportunities to use these finances because this building does have needs. So it's not saying that we're committing to that, but that we want the flexibility to be able to use those proceeds for those needs. Because there are challenges, and I know that you're fully aware of that, so I'm not trying to lecture at all.
Well, I want to point out too, this is project examples, and this isn't a Dave or I's idea. This is a list of collaborative efforts from not only the board of supervisors, but also people that work here in the municipality. So I don't know why this is being shades thrown over this direction, but these are examples that we have to list in order to get the bond.
I know, and so that is part of the issue because we don't know exactly what a future board's going to decide to do with this money. Is like apparently what you're telling me right now. So knowing that, I can't support this.
I think that's a legitimate point. I think that's probably true for most issuances. I mean, we have a list of projects. I know when I was on the board at Exeter, we had a 30-year project list, and that has changed often. So it's not uncommon, but I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
I guess I just haven't heard anything out of you though anyway on how we're paying for it.
I don't agree to all of this.
I'm not saying this in general, I'm saying how do we pay for the roads going forward? How do we pay for the storm?
If you want to keep making this a personal discussion.
I'm asking
You're
you
asking
for an
me,
idea.
and I'm saying right now,
I'm
I don't
listening to
support
you.
this. I don't have all this delineated in a lot of detail, and some of this goes out even into
How do we
3
pay for the
years.
$2 million on the roads that need to get done? That I didn't support either. I'm asking, what's your option? I don't know. I'm asking
I think
for
we need
ideas.
to look at all the different options moving forward.
That's what I'm asking.
That's exactly it.
And
So
the
we
streams
need
as well.
somebody who's got the
So-
great financial background to look at this.
So what we
moving
need to
forward
do, if
since
we're not
Hunter
gonna
won't
do
be
this
here.
tonight, we need to have another budget meeting because this one isn't gonna be worth anything. Because we're not gonna do any of the roads, we're not gonna do any more streams because we don't have the money for it. And that's as simple as it gets.
So what you just said there is not exactly true, because every year we do road projects. You said we're not gonna
You're
do
right.
any of the roads. We do pay the roads, a certain set of roads
How much?
every year.
How much
Yeah.
do we have slated for roads this year?
300,000 or in that area,
Mm.
200 for 2023 or 2024?
2024.
2024, 265,000. You'll see later what roads would be proposed within that, but I mean, it's very simple time-saving work. It's not grappling with some of the challenges that exist there.
What did we spend this year?
This year, 681,000, and we delayed an additional 50,000 for behind the lake until '24.
So we still have to pay for that.
Yes.
Well, we used ARPA funds for some of that, and Liquid
That's-
Fuels money for
yeah.
some of that
Yeah,
too.
but
so
ARPA
we
doesn't
paid for it.
replenish every year, so I'm asking,
Doesn't replenish
like,
anymore.
we are saying, we have some serious problems here we need to take care of because in the last, 13 years, there's been, and I'm not knocking old boards, but there has been a serious disservice done to Maidencreek.
And
So-
some of the roads have deteriorated quite quickly, and I think in some
Absolutely,
cases,
but
some
it's
of them
not
weren't
free.
built, some of them were not built to the highest standards, and they broke down quicker than they should have too.
With
So-
monies that we had. So I guess, I'm asking again, where are we getting this money? Do you have a money tree somewhere we can pay for this? Because
I don't need
if
your
we-
sarcasm, I'm
Well, if we
sorry.
don't move forward with something, Maidencreek is in some serious jeopardy.
Can I ask a question? Are there not grants available for some of the items that you have on this list?
For-
And can we not get grants to pay for some of these?
Grants aren't guaranteed.
If you keep writing and keep hitting the doors,
We
you
Well-
have a
have
better
applied-
chance
we-
at them,
to
but
answer
sitting
your
and not
question-
asking, you're not gonna get anything.
To answer your question, we have received some grants over the years for trucks, like a back leaf collection truck, you know, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And we have applied for grants for the West Walnut Tree Bridge and stream restoration because of a lot of erosion. We're still waiting to hear back on that. I think that one, those, the announcements are made for who are successful. Those grant applications is usually made like in March.
Mhm.
So March of next year, we'll have a better idea on that.
The
So
grant
we
that
haven't
we
put out
did,
a lot
yeah, for
of
the truck.
applications.
And this year, the storm damage that we had, that all came out of,
Truck.
you know, we're close to 200,000, I believe, for that we never even budgeted for.
More,
Well, more, 250,000?
300.
300?
Yeah.
So that was to try to preserve people's homes because of the flooding that was occurring. And there's still more to do, but we gotta have money to do it. And that's to try to preserve people's houses so that they can live in them in some sort of belief of comfort. I mean, we never planned on a 1,000-year flood.
No, nobody does.
Yeah.
But didn't the state step in some
Nope.
place there? to
Yeah, there
help?
was no funding
$0.
from the state or federal government.
No funding, no grants, no nothing, and we anticipated, as it has for historical purposes, the president used to step in and say, okay, we're going to do this, and we're gonna sign a disaster. He didn't do that for us.
I think your point's well taken, though, that grant funding needs to be a part of this formula, and I think it truthfully is. There are not grants that are gonna be available for basic road improvement, which I think is the biggest, staff's opinion is that that's the biggest need. But some of these pieces, like the guys are talking about, and Heidi is talking about as well, with stormwater projects, stuff like that, definitely grants are available. I think the size and the scope and the intensity of work needed to be done since the flood is what's precipitating the need to try and address those quickly. Does that at least answer your question, whether you agree or not?
Yep.
Just another comment in the back
Yes, Mr. Voorhees?
Yeah, it's all words. I'm just trying to wrap my head around something. The board has approved a $5 million bond for the water authority already?
We were backing that it's good till basically the end of the year.
But you
But
as
we
a
can
board,
go on our own
you
at that.
approved the water authority bond, correct?
Yes,
Well,
Right,
The
so
guarantee.
now-
Yeah, yeah,
we
The
guaranteed it.
guarantee for
Yeah.
them.
Right, now you're looking for another $5 million bond. So, to Mr. Meck's point, which I agree with him, over the last 15, 20 years, this township has dropped the ball, and it's the number one thing, taxes.
Mhm.
Every time we shut down the tax, we shut down the tax and no taxes, and here we are, granted, and all 3 years are in the situation of, where do you get the money? To Mr. Meck's comment, absolutely. But the bottom line is, if you're looking at spending $500,000 for interest, maybe there should be an addendum put into the public to say, hey, look, you can either pay this interest, or you can raise your taxes. Because the tax burden will hurt senior citizens and middle class in this country right now because of inflation to start with. Right, so I understand you have a dilemma, but the taxing aspect has been dropped, the ball has been dropped here, there's no question about it. It's not on any of you, because you weren't around 15, 20 years ago as a board. So taxing's gonna have to be something that may have to be thought about, and I'm sure you have, and it may be drastic. You know? Thank you.
Thank you.
May I?
Yes, sir.
I think sometimes people confuse real estate taxes and the school taxes. At 1.35 mils, my house is appraised or assessed at about 105,000. That's $135 a year. It's a little over, what, 12 bucks a month I pay in taxes. And when Heidi talks about doubling it, okay, I'm gonna pay 25 bucks a month in taxes. Taxes haven't been raised in a very long time. Recycling is well over $300,000 a year. It more than doubled
more than
last year because the value of recycle, what the Mosquero gets and anybody gets for recycling has plummeted. We have a bridge that is failing. Are we gonna abandon yet another bridge? So when people go, oh, you're raising taxes a mill. Okay, that's $135 for me. You know, people are assessed higher, could be more than that. But for me, my taxes are gonna go from $12 a month to $25. I can live with that.
And quite honestly,
And
there are some requirements we have.
And to say taxes are gonna be doubled, well, taxes have to go up anyway. We have to raise taxes. So is it gonna go up 1 mil or 1.5 mil? We're talking dollars. And we need, this township, like Charlie said, has been neglected. The taxes haven't been raised forever. Homes were built where they shouldn't have been, and the creeks were let go. And one of our families in our township are out at least $70,000 out of pocket because of that flood. I think we have to do whatever we can to protect our residents.
The recycling is mandated by state law. We get a lot of mandates that we have to follow. And it doesn't say, well, I don't care how you get it or where the money comes from. When you're in a government situation, the only place you can get it is from taxing. So taxing is a reality of government, whether you're local, school, or federal, state, it doesn't matter, county. But the realization is that your municipal government services are what does the most for you. You get to see those services. You get to see the police officers, the fire department, the ambulance that comes around when you're injured or ill. You get to see the road crew when they plow your snow. If we didn't have any of those, you wouldn't go to work and you would have a shortfall as well. Okay, so everything works in conjunction, one with the other. This list was compiled for this bond out of a necessity. There's some things that we have to do. And, you know, if we're talking 1 or 1.5 mils, if we're not doing the bond, we may be going up 4 or 5 mils. Because we still have to replace bridges. We still have some stuff we have to do on the streams. And we have to do repairs on our building. Everybody here repairs their homes, I hope, when it's necessary, and your car and things like that. Well, we need to do the same. And we don't come out to you every day and say, hey, listen, we got a flat tire, can we go get it fixed? No, that's what we have the government for, and says, go ahead, Hunter, go get it fixed. So that's what we've got to be able to do. We can't put a newsletter out and say, hey, how do you folks feel about replacing a tire? How do you folks feel about replacing a bridge? Reality is government's got to operate, and a lot of times it operates at the negativity of some of the residents. We can't please everybody all the time. And we realize that. We've got lots of decisions coming up, and I know we're not going to be able to please everybody with those. Somebody's going to be, you know, if we decide to replace the bridge, there may be somebody who says, well, we shouldn't do that. Maybe somebody says we should. We did a lot for our police department, pulling them back together again, and that came at community support because the community wants that. We need that. We need our fire department. We need our ambulance. We need our road crew. And that all comes at government expense. So we have to look at that and make our decisions based on that. And we're in a shortfall right now. We didn't plan on it. We didn't plan on the flood. But we got to fix the resolve to it now. And now we can't neglect. But nobody's going to donate. I haven't seen anybody come up and say, hey, listen, here's $1 million, go for it. Nobody does it. So bonds are the way we do it. And this bond at this particular time is at a rate that makes it beneficial for us. That's why we're looking at it now. It makes it a better decision than saying next year, oh, we'll borrow $5 million next year and the interest rate's going to be 7%. And who knows, it could be that high. We don't know.
I'm
But
going to bring up one thing too, real quick. So, because we're doing this in close proximity to the water authority, let's say we were doing this from, like they did, from scratch, right out the gate. What are we looking at in fees just to even do this?
your fees.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
our fees, bond council fees, I mean, a $5 million issue, I would estimate the total cost would be somewhere in the 100-ish, $120,000 range.
So,
But it's not quite that high now because you're doing it closer
Again,
proximity.
some of it will be
absorbed.
Right.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. And I would also add, and I know you guys have brought it up because we've discussed this in previous meetings, but the concept behind this is we're issuing 5 million-ish because we are meeting the standards of the small issuer exemption under arbitrage rebate rules, whereby under the current market conditions, the funds that we're borrowing, let's make the assumption that the rate is exactly what the authority got, 4.63. Those funds can be invested at a yield above that. Under the current interest rate environment, which can change, that rate is approximately 5.4, 5.5% right now. So we would be earning above that, and those funds could be used toward the capital projects as well. So we're not doing this to arbitrage, but it's a value of doing this in this time period.
Well, I have a follow-up question to that, because the sheet that we have here, the issuance costs for listed is 200,000.
Yeah, estimate on my part.
So you're saying the total cost is about how much?
I don't have the final numbers, but I mean, we have the BB, it's bond counsel, financial advisor.
Oh, yeah, I don't know
Yeah, I said probably around 120-ish.
Okay.
And I think the 120 is just a reflection of your savings because you've done all this work
Yeah,
previously
I mean,
for us.
there's a few of them that are tied to the size of the transaction.
Okay.
Okay, so the underwriter cost is based on size of transaction. The municipal bond insurance will be based on the size of the transaction. Okay, so those will move a little bit depending on what we do. Then there's some fixed costs. And fixed costs are traditionally tied to just the work that's being done. So those are considered soft costs, mostly with people in this room, to be honest. But then there's some costs related to the credit rating. Again, if that credit rating is done fast enough, again, we took work through the process, you would probably get a discount on that from Standard & Poor's because you're doing it fast enough. Again, it's not going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars of savings by doing it faster, but again, there will be some efficiencies tied to the transaction that are worthy in that standpoint. My viewpoint has always been, let the projects make you go through the process and issue the debt when ready. Don't let the other way around. So conceivably, we're providing the opportunity here, we're doing the legal action, and we'll make the final decision on when to go and how much to go for based on the needs of the township, which appears to be high enough and reasonable enough under the requirements under the city
This
law.
makes us street ready.
Yes, correct.
Well, like this, they're, just because they're on this list doesn't mean they're have-to-dos, but like I said, I wanted to bring them, so, I didn't catch your name, miss. No, the man behind you.
Oh,
Russ,
Josh.
question. No, behind
Oh,
you.
no,
Your statement about the grants and stuff. So we did get a grant to get this, our recent dump truck, that was through the recycling grant, right?
Yes.
And, that grant only covered 60% of the total, and that didn't include the upfit for the truck to make it ready for the municipality. So we still have to pay, even though we get a grant, it doesn't mean we're getting a grant 100% in full payment. So it's also money that we can't count on because it's not something we have to go after it.
And only one of the vehicles listed here would be eligible for that grant,
Right.
which is the dump truck replacement for $19.99, I mean. But pickup, mini excavator, lift truck, line painter, those would not be eligible for that grant.
Correct, right.
Because it's dedicated towards the use of recycling.
But I kind of wanted to point that out too, though. So we have items that are listed here, and again, this was a collaborative effort, amongst a lot of people in this building. And, we got trucks that are 1999, we have 2005s. We have a truck right now that I heard isn't gonna be able to get inspected, that needs to get replaced because that's falling apart. This is a truck that they were driving on the road not even a month ago. We are behind on a lot of things, just the operational things. So, yeah, again, this is a list for you guys to present, but doesn't necessarily, it's a broad spectrum of things to show that because we have to spend, what, 80?
You have to reasonably expect to spend 85% of the money within 3 years.
Right, so within 3 years, we have to show that it has to be spent. So these are why they're listed here. It doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna be done that way. We might have more road work to do, and we probably do need to upgrade our fleet somewhat because these guys are gonna be plowing snow,
And there's some building issues here that we
yeah,
have to
the porch is
address.
about ready to fall off. It's been that way since I started, so.
So we've got to address those issues. And grants, 20 years ago, you could apply for a grant real easy. They were easy to get. A lot of companies were giving them out. A lot of those companies aren't around anymore. I used to write grants, and I wrote a lot of grants. You know, $1 million grants and things like that don't happen anymore. Or the whole way of writing them has changed.
Oh, I understand that. I understand that part of it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, was that
It's,
done?
it's a consideration.
Yeah,
We always
I
look at
just
that.
don't know what's on that list, and when you hear of someone saying, I have to spend this amount of money and this amount within 3 years, I just don't want it being willy-nilly thrown here and thrown
No.
there for stuff that really isn't necessary,
That's an excellent point.
you know?
Yeah,
I don't see that list, so I don't know what's on
Right.
it, you know?
I just want to add one thing, we talked about earlier, one of the policies that we're asking you to consider is a debt management policy. And as part of that, that provides guidance for decision-making on certain capital needs. So
Right.
conceivably, what you, the things you're considering using your borrowed funds for will be within a range that follow these certain rules. So, you know, you wouldn't buy something that has a useful life of 1 year and amortize that over 20 years.
Right.
Those are the things you would consider. So it kind of goes on to the bigger picture of the
Mhm.
considerations that are being discussed.
you want to make sure that we're spending our money wisely
Sure.
and making the investment into
In
a.
long-term assets.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're trying to do for everybody here. Because this is your money, it's our money too. We're taxpayers also, we don't get a discount because we're supervisors.
So I have another question. For 2023, or no, 24 requested, the debt service is listed as $856,000.
Yes.
Why exactly is that?
So the reason for the debt service being that large is the 600,000 that you see, because there's the six
Yeah,
first
I
there.
see that, yeah, principal.
That 600,000 for debt principal is short-term financing, specifically the tax revenue anticipation note. If you look up to line 394 at the top of the page, under short-term debt, 600,000,
Yeah,
they match each other. So that's the principal repayment of the $600,000 borrowing for the tax revenue anticipation note. The interest rate that right now I'm using 7.5% over an entire year, which I don't think it will take that long to repay that, would be $45,000. That's included in the debt interest. The $180,000 that we would be obligated to pay in 2024 for the bond is also included in 472 for debt interest. In addition, the vehicle lease for truck number 11? Is the truck, the newest one, 2022?
Yes.
Truck number 11? Okay, for truck number 11 is that 31,174, and then the interest is nearly 2,000.
Okay. And then I have another question about a recycling assessment. That was account 383. You're showing a recycling assessment of $422,000.
Yes,
Is that an assessment to be made to every household?
it would be to every eligible household. If you recall from the 5-year presentation, that would be 3,167 households.
Right.
Because there were some eligibility parameters, like it wasn't, I excluded all the vacant properties.
Well, yeah, they're not using
Yeah.
it. And how much was that for the household?
$133.25. I think that that will be lowered in the future. The reason that you have that much to begin with is you're trying to create the cash flow that allows you to not have to borrow either from the general fund or from short-term financing every year to pay your first couple of bills before you get your recycling fees in March and April and May.
And then how would that be collected from each household?
It would be on the tax bill.
Tax bill, okay,
Yep.
yeah, I know there's some other townships that do that.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So that would be like kind of like another tax then, like in addition to like the fire tax and.
I would contend it's a fee, but you're.
Well, but it's on
you're
a
right.
tax bill, so.
Yes, you're
Because it's
right.
on a tax bill, you know, if you have
I-
a mortgage or
yeah,
something, they count
yeah.
it as kind of that.
I'm splitting hairs by.
But no, I know,
But I hear what you're saying.
You can call it either one, but it's on your tax bill.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks for that.
Okay, so I guess we're at a point where we have to make a decision here. We brought these gentlemen in, and I'm inclined to do the paperwork now, because I think we're really gonna need to, we're not gonna be able to come up with it in the middle of the year next year if we don't do anything now, and And we're definitely not gonna be able to include a lot of things in our budget. So that would make this budget meeting a moot point tonight. And we'd have to restructure the complete budget. Because we based it around what the three of us decided as going forward, so. What are your thoughts?
Well, like I said, everything, obviously we have to, and I've said this before, we have to plan appropriately. We just can't willy-nilly go throwing finances at dumb things.
No.
And, you had made that statement about the debt management plan, so, so I have some comfort at least that is a guiding light for whoever is here down the road. I just, knowing what we see on the hard numbers right here, I don't know how we bridge that gap right now without doing it.
That's where I'm at. I have reservations about raising taxes too. I don't want to pay more money.
I'd rather not borrow either, but
But-
I don't think we have a choice, that's
No.
my point.
We're at the end of the road here and there's no can to kick anymore.
Well,
We're
if
at
we
a brick
keep
wall.
going down that road and we don't have monies to go and do this later, then we're really screwed.
We may not even have monies to do emergency things that we have to do. That's.
Well, I don't think that's true, because we have other monies coming in from other sources. What would the proceeds from this bond be available to the township? Yeah.
30 days after the pricing, essentially.
So what's an approximate date that you
It
expect?
could be as early as February, depending on how fast we turn things around. Early February.
Which is why we need to do the train,
Yes.
to float the gap until these monies would be available.
Right.
To
And
some
keep in
degree.
mind, these borrowed funds aren't used for operations.
Correct.
Right.
Understood, right. But
The train can be used for
we
operations.
could push other things that
Yes,
are on this
exactly.
list
Yeah,
out of the
adjust
way,
it around.
take care of the train, what we need to operationally,
Yes.
and then we can go hit the ground running with our projects
Yeah.
after we float the gap. I don't see any other way around it right now. I don't, and I understand, could we go with a lower amount? Probably, but what you're saying is that we're not qualified then to use it to make us money then either, right?
Well, again, keep in mind, the max parameters gives the flexibility to do up to a certain amount.
Sure.
From the federal tax code, we want to hit the $5 million max
Right.
between proceeds. So
Makes sense.
again, the municipality, the township can say, hey, we only really have $3 million worth of things, go get $3 million. We're happy to do that, but this provides that flexibility to allow for that.
Do we have the ordinance?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't print out a copy for you this evening, but it was emailed to the board, I think, last Thursday.
Right, so we don't have one to.
Oh,
We have an
no,
ordinance.
we do. They're right here.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
There's a lot of paperwork to sign, which doesn't have to be done exactly right now, but.
Right.
Yeah, tonight's just to adopt the ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's some
Just to
DCB
adopt so that we are able to do that later if the board so chooses.
Yeah, there's some DCB documents that will be a part of this, but that's, can be done a little later.
Yeah, that one.
Okay, so I guess at this point, do we have a motion to adopt ordinance number?
Put me on the spot with that one. Give me 1 second.
No. No, there isn't any.
There you should go ahead. You fill it.
No, I know, but I don't have the numbers, that's what the question is.
I just have one quick question. You float this bond, none of this money can be used to offset taxes. But if you float the bond, you're still gonna have to raise taxes in the township, correct?
Yes.
What would be, if you did a 3 or 5 year plan on what the millage would be to try to get you out of a dead area within a 3 to 5 year millage wise, have you even looked at that?
Yeah.
We,
Well, it depends on what assumptions you're making. Are you making the assumption to just keep us afloat for what you're doing now, or are you gonna start meeting some of these long-term obligations that I think the board is looking to address?
And adding in what you have basically proposed as a budget, where would you be if you did 3 to 5 year tax increase, millage wise per year, that would avoid having to float a bond, that you're gonna be giving almost $500,000 a year interest.
It's not $500,000 a year of interest.
It's for,
It's not 500, it's
Yeah,
$400,000 of principal and interest
for the term
for
of the loan,
20 years, yeah,
for 20 years, and it's a 20-year bond then.
correct.
And it cannot be utilized to offset taxes.
It's used for capital.
Can only be used for capital improvement projects or capital projects.
Right, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. You-
Like
you
bridges,
couldn't,
roads,
if
that
you want 1 year not to raise taxes, use any of that money.
Well,
It has
you're-
to be for capital improvements in the municipality.
Technically, you're leveraging the use of the projects to reduce the payments you'd be making on things that you would do short-term,
I
right now,
understand what
longer
you're
term.
saying.
So conceivably, if you borrow the $5 million, use that number, $400,000 a year, it's now leveraged out over the course of time. As you are asking, if you did
Right.
things over the course of time, you may be spending millions of dollars a year on things on the short end, which means you probably would have to raise taxes to a higher extent to cover those costs over the course of time.
Right.
But if you're asking, what is that number? And maybe Hunter's going to provide that to you in a second.
I would say north of 5 mils. I'm shooting from the hip on
That
that
would be
one.
per year.
Yes.
Or-
Not, we would increase 5 mils every year between now and then, but I think that the township would need to be at 5 mils to meet the obligations that are listed
And
here.
we're at 1.5 now, correct?
We're at 1.35 for general purposes, 0.4 for fire.
It's the 1.75.
Yes, total.
Well,
But
that's the real estate tax.
The north of 5 would be for general uses. You would take out the fire, so then you're looking at 5.4. And on top of that, that doesn't consider some of the long-term strategic concerns that were raised in the 5-year plan related to EMS, related to police, related to fire, related to maintaining the fund balance, all those
Right.
pieces. So,
Services that are within the municipality.
yeah, it's hard to give you a number, but I think I'd be comfortable saying at least 5 mils.
So if you went 6 or 7, then you could actually just start to develop additional money down the road, then that you could even pay that loan off sooner then, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the bond, so the debt itself would be callable, so you have the
Right.
opportunity to prepay it in the future.
Right.
So that doesn't, preclude you from doing that either way.
Right, so there's no penalty for prepayment or anything, correct?
It's a 5-year call provision, traditionally, with bonds of
Okay.
this size.
Thank you.
And I gotta say that when it comes to taxes, we're one of the lowest communities of any community in this area that has police, fire, water and sewer authority. We are, and we kept it that way. As a matter of fact, when I was on the board a number of years ago, we even lowered the taxes. So it's not that we're not trying to be good stewards of your money. We are, but if we wait, and let's say we wait to do the roads till we can't just repave them and we've got to go and do a full reclamation, the cost of the full reclamation is gonna far supersede what it was gonna cost us now with this project addendum. So those are all considerations that were considered here. When we sit down to discuss this stuff, we're not trying to say, oh, let's see who we can screw in the public. That's not it at all, because we are the public. Every one of us is.
Ordinance number 258.
Dash G3, or the T3 dash.
Nope, just 258 because it's
It's
sequentially, I
consecutive.
think the first one is 1976, or 67.
Okay, so do I have a motion to adopt ordinance number 258?
I'll make the motion, we adopt ordinance number 258.
Do I have a second? I'll second the motion. All in agreement?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay, for reasons stated earlier.
Okay. All right.
Can I just say thank you to you guys? A lot of work involved with this, so I just want to say thank you.
And to you as well, it was good working with you, and I'm sure we'll be talking in the future.
Right on.
Thank you.
Well, I don't see how that's
You bet.
possible because you're not gonna be here.
Jamie's got plenty of business all around Berks County, so I know we're going to be running into each other.
It's, I find my place all over the place around. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
You do the same. Thank you. Okay.
And good evening.
So I guess Manager in Public Works is up.
So I'm gonna turn off our video quick and just throw the PowerPoint presentation up. I am not presenting this, I just wanted something for us to come back to in the conversation as you guys work through this. There we go. So, I guess I can present this slide. What we're currently looking at for the 2023 projection, and this is very variable, and I have some concerns about this number, but on paper it would suggest this. Our fund balance would come in about $344,000 at the end of the year. That is less than 15% of our expenditures.
Which page are you on in here?
It's not in this
It's
one.
not in this one.
It's just in this.
Okay.
Yep. The projected, which you can see in this sheet, it matches this.
Okay.
The projected for 2024 is that number that you see up there. So the budget surplus is projected on the requested for 2024 to be $1,939.89. Using the 5-year projection, I pulled that out to what it looks like for the next few years. I note that there is a TRAN included both in our projection for 24 and 25, and that the proposed millage, when we'd all be said and done, that's proposed here is 2.6 mils, inclusive of the general fund purposes and a fire tax increase. So we're going from 1.75 to 2.6. I'm sorry, 1.35 to 2.6.
There's a total of 1.75 on the real estate tax.
Correct, but the general use.
Then I understand.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so,
the like if I just clarify, so the 2.6 does not include the 0.4.
correct,
So
correct.
it's really going to a total of 3 then.
Yeah, so there's a 0.25 increase proposed for the fire tax. So the total that's proposed here, and of course this is subject to the board's approval, is 3.25 total for the entire bill.
Okay. Plus the new recycling charge too.
Yes.
Okay.
So the first item is road work for 2024. I would love to dig into this more, but I want to save your guys' time. We got the robotics analysis back. They have to fill in some gaps, but basically what we found is that it hews pretty closely to what Keith, Tom, and I had developed as part of the road assessment.
The 15-year projection that you had made.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
well then that's a good validation of the work that was done.
I think so too, and I'm glad
Oh,
you said that.
no, seriously, it's good to know that, I mean,
That we know what
were
we're
there
doing.
any surprises that?
There were some surprises, and I think, and Keith can speak to this a little bit more too. What we see, I think, happening is that there are the robotics analysis, and I'm trying to get it to go back here. Technology. Go back.
You want me to do it over here?
Nope.
Yes,
I don't
please.
mind. I'm offered, whatever you need.
Okay, not that one.
Welcome to the
You
world of
you want four?
computers.
I'm not touching it, and it's moving.
There you go.
Okay. Oh, dear Lord.
Oh, it's on play. You gotta pause it.
Where?
It's
oh,
on play.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
can just hit, yeah.
So what we're seeing in some of these snapshots is, if you look at, oh man, Sophia and Lydia, Anna. Okay. You can see here that it's rated as rating 1, which is rated as excellent. When we did the road analysis, we rated those as good because their condition is good. The challenge with them is that they're 10 years old. So there is progressive degradation that's occurring and has occurred that is not yet visible. But when robotics is driving along, what they're seeing is that there are no imperfections in the road using the AI software. So in that account, there's a lot of snapshot issues that disagree with our ratings. I think there were maybe 4 ratings that were anything more than a 1 difference, like a 1 rating
Deviation.
difference. Yeah. And those ones we think, are more localized without going into too many specifics. But it's something I think that we still have a lot of confidence in the schedule that we put together. We've made some changes as well based on these results. And I think the results also show that we have a growing liability with those yellow rated roads, which are those midsection, where you're really beginning to be between, can we do a chip seal or can we overlay? Keith, do you want to add anything to what I've said? Okay. I'm really going to try not to present. I know I said I wasn't going to, and it's too late for that.
Oh, no,
There
I'm
we
gonna
go.
mess it
Okay,
up.
so we broke out 3 scenarios for road work for '24, and what I'm kind of looking for from the board would be, how do you want to address this year? Liquid fuels only shows the names of the roads that we would propose this year based on their current condition with the robotics study, with the road plan, and conversations with Tom. So you can see there that we're projecting 259,000, just short of 260,000, and that would be 2.67 miles. There's 2 other scenarios using bond funds, depending on how much we're prepared to go into those obligations. What you can see is we're doing more roads with liquid fuels plus some bond money. In liquid fuels plus major bond money, we're not only doing more roads, but we're doing more intense needs. So redoing all of Cornerstone, all of Spirit, all of the parts of East Westner and West Westner that really need attention. Those are expensive improvements that each can range anywhere from 200 to I think 400,000, depending on the length that we'd actually be doing. I know it's so close. I'm running into all these hurdles tonight. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. So at this point, I'll stop and let you guys kind of talk through that. I'm happy to answer questions. Keith's happy to answer questions.
So what account number is that you're talking about for this road work
So
on here?
the number that is listed in the capital fund budget, capital expense fund budget, is 1.25 million. It really is a fill-in number. So
And what account number?
that would be 439
439. Okay.
under page 5. So that could be zeroed out with the bond proceeds. That could be maximized. It's really at the board's discretion. We do have some recommendations inside of there, but it plainly really was a budget number to reflect money being invested into that. Otherwise, you'll also see the 265 on the liquid fuels, and we would propose to use 265,000 from liquid fuels in all 3 of these scenarios. So the total number would be, for that capital expense fund, 265,000 minus whichever route you wanted to take. And we can come up with alternatives too. If you say, we only want to do 750, or you only want to do 100,000, we can show what those roads would be at that point. But based on Keith's judgment, Tom's judgment, and where the plans and robotics showed, these are the roads we think have the most pressing need to avoid long-term liability.
I think, not deviating from your list of stuff here, also something to, so first of all, we're looking at bond money that we don't have right now, number 1. So I just want to keep that in the forefront. So if we go the middle route there with some bond money, we could easily, no matter what, we could always go back down to liquid fuels only, right?
Yes.
So point being though, on any of these here, I don't know what your guys' thoughts are, but this is me, if we get this bond money, I think we need to look at an alternative exit to the development behind CVS. And that could potentially tie up, it will tie up some funds because it's gonna be a new road that would have to get scratched in, whether it's a limited access. But I think we need to look at some way of budgeting that. And that, to me, is something that the bond money should go for.
That's a quarter-mile stretch.
Do we have an estimate on the cost?
I'm just throwing this wrench out there now, because
Oh, we don't need, okay.
I just, it was one of the things that, like, if we're gonna do liquid fuels, fine, stick to that list there. If we're gonna start pulling in some bond money there, that's where I see bond money being utilized for stuff like that.
Has the bridge been included in this process yet?
It's not reflected in the capital expense fund monies, but the 500 grand is dedicated within the bond
Right,
framework that you guys have on this sheet.
but it's not included in the 2024 budget.
Yeah, easy to add it in if you want to
Right.
go down that route.
But again, it's banking on monies we don't have yet.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, until we get an estimate, I mean, I agree that there needs to be an emergency exit out of the, on Talani Heights development, because that is a major problem. If they were at the roundabout, there was an accident where people were stuck in their development, couldn't get in or couldn't get out, depending when their situation was for, I don't know, some said 6 or 7 hours, which
Right.
is that's a significant problem. There are different ways to address that, because there can be a paved road, it can be like a geogrid type of road, used only in like for emergency purposes, and where exactly it goes and all of that is, has to be developed. And then of course, there's some people that are for it, and then there were even some people that voted against it. But I think it needs to be looked at by our township engineer to address it and come up with the best
I think
engineering solution.
it actually came to us as a result of our hearings. And because it was brought up, the fact that if the road's closed off or there's a major crash that precludes emergency services from getting into there, I think that puts a liability on us now. So I think we need to address that. And it's a quarter-mile stretch out the back, but we're gonna have to do some land discussions with property owner, and what we can do, and that's gonna be probably the easiest way, and I can't say the cheapest way, but is with Mr. Giorgio. So that's gonna be our probably best way, going out into Maidencreek Road. And it's gonna give them the opportunity to get in and out of their development when there is an emergency. It's also gonna give fire and EMS, but I wanna be able to be certain that fire and EMS can get back there too. I mean, if we make a road that's gonna be a little cow path, and one car can get back at a time, it doesn't do anything for emergency services. So we need to address it so that it does prepare in that stead as well.
I'm only bringing it up because I'd like to see it
On the plan.
on the plan for, bond money.
Okay.
Obviously, I don't think we could do it with liquid fuels money, but
Well, we could, but it's not on liquid fuel.
well, it's gonna take more than liquid fuels to do it,
Yeah,
I knew that was gonna happen.
so.
liquid fuel.
But you're gonna have to have a dollar amount before you can even know where, even to put it,
Right.
or at least a ballpark
Right,
number.
but I'd like to see it on the list.
Okay.
I think it should be investigated, and I think we should get a ballpark number.
You want to call it Aaron's Road?
As long as it's not a Memorial Road, right?
Oh, wow. I caught that a second later.
It was a joke.
You've been sitting close to me too long.
So,
I have been.
I guess are you looking at which way we'd like to go with this?
I think really all that you would need to do is set a budget number. And if you don't want to take one of the ones that's up there, we'll come back, or Keith will come back in December and propose what these roads are. The reason we do want to try and finalize which roads to do in '24 is, and I think the developments, we know which ones we want to do, and those are kind of consistent, so we could commit to those. we want to let the authority know so that they can prepare bids to do their
Right.
improvements for sewer and water.
And then there was also the issue of any other utilities that wanted to do excavation work in our roads too. So
Mhm.
do we know what, like UGI and some of the other utilities want to do?
So when we're talking about the expansion for Comcast, which they have not abandoned the idea, they have just not run forward with it. Or with the other company, Fastbridge, that's currently in YO, Muhlenberg, Spring Township area, and now South Heidelberg Township as well. Both of those groups are primarily using the shoulder, boring behind the shoulder. So there are relatively few crossings that would actually occur beneath the road, and there's even fewer openings in the roads
That's
themselves. Yeah. But based on the ordinance you guys passed too, they would have to pay a progressive degradation fee if they proposed anything in the roadways, which I think we can have a little bit more confidence now is going to actually make the township whole, versus, holy. I like that.
But then at the same time, we wanted to maintain the integrity of the roads as long as we could. So
Yes.
knowing what they were gonna do and knowing what we projected to do, you know, and the authority and anybody else,
Mhm.
it would be good to coordinate all that.
Yeah,
Because nobody wants a newly paved road and then it's dug up.
totally agree, totally agree.
So I mean, I guess I'm, where I'm at with it anyways, I'm okay, I guess, going middle of the road there and, you know, using that as kind of our go point.
Okay. Would you want the rear access for Onalani Heights funds to be in addition to
Well,
that?
so that's why I was getting that point.
Okay.
So, depending on what the cost would be, I'm just kind of running numbers in my head, you know. I think you're gonna be,
You're gonna have to pay for the land, of course.
right, I'm thinking you're gonna be 250, 300 till you're said and done to that.
With
Is
the
that
land, I
fair?
think that's,
Acquisition.
Right. I'm just looking at you ballpark for the paving side of it, I think, yeah, till you get the land acquisition and all that, but, so if you did that, you know, you might only be able to take care of the liquid fuels only portion of it, and then take care of that section, you know, so that's, like, you won't be able to do item 12 through 17, because you're gonna pick up, you're gonna default back to items 1 through 11 on the liquid fuels only, right?
if that's the will of the board, so be it. I think the concern that I would reflect is that there will come a point where these roads really begin to need
Sure.
full asphalt over.
And I'm gonna say, there are some roads on that list
Right.
that are really in bad shape, a lot of alligator, whatever. And it's to the point where if we let that go, you're gonna have some serious problems, and you're gonna lose the base. So I think, you know, like going to full reclamation, so I don't wanna see us get, because we've had that in the past, and that was one of the reasons we did even an accelerated schedule of paving, because there were roads in this township that were let go too long in the past, and we don't want that to happen, and
Yeah.
raise our costs going forward. So I think we should, I think that 1 through 17 is a reasonable list for 24. Plus looking at the costs for,
So if we look at 1
Yeah.
through 17 and add the additional road onto a capital improvements,
Mhm.
and utilize the money from
The bond.
the bond.
Well, that's what that's saying, though, that's liquid fuels plus bond money.
Right,
Yes.
to come to
You're
a
taking-
total, so you're still gonna have.
You're still pulling that 200 and whatever,
So in this,
265.
yeah, you'd be looking at 400 grand, give or take.
But we
in
also
that.
have what we have to do on the backside of the lake, which we're committed to doing. We have a contract with that, right?
Oh, yes, yes, yep.
but that's
That-
already been accounted for, because you carried that money over, right?
That is in the general fund for improvements.
But you carried it over from 23 into 24, because it was supposed to be for 23, right? Or was there some other things going on?
Yes, generally, but the way that our expenses have been going, I don't know if I could really say.
It's committed.
I mean, it is committed, yes, it's
We
committed.
have a commitment for it, but the
Yes.
money's not necessarily there.
Yes. Yeah. Which is the main reason why we wanted to delay it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not specifically committed in 24, is what you're saying now?
Financially, it is in the budget, yes.
So where is it in the budget?
I believe it is general fund, looking at 438 roads and bridges as part of the.
That's in- You're on page 1?
Yes, page 1,
Yeah, okay.
438,
Yeah.
190,000,
Yeah,
547.75.
Okay.
So that's included in that.
Yes.
What is our debt on that, do you know, off the top of your head?
You mean what the cost of it is?
What's our cost of it?
55, I think, yeah. When they actually finish it, it could be a little bit less, it could be a little bit more, but they were going to hold their bid price from last year.
Well, depending on the price of oil.
So, I think what I heard though from you guys for capital expense fund is, do you wanna have the Cornerstone Bridge money included in the budget for '24?
Well, that's another thing too, is we got prices on that currently. Obviously, it's not something we're ready to do now.
Yeah.
If we get the bond money, then it's something that should get done, because it's the same as the road going out of the backfill.
Well, I believe Tom Unger said though, well, it's not in great shape, it could still exist, it could be maintained in a reasonable condition for at least a couple of years if it wasn't done in '24, probably could be done in '25.
I mean, it's not gonna fall down, it's just,
No, it's
the
what he said.
the design of it is not gonna allow it to fall down. It just isn't gonna happen. But it's, yeah, the whole thing's dropped, it moves.
No, I've seen it, you know,
Water's going under it.
there's significant deterioration, so I asked him that question specifically, and that's what he said, as, you know, as a professional.
I think it's still gonna be a problem for flooding. So I think that's one of the important factors that we're looking at and trying to.
Well, again, I'm not saying we do it with that, if we don't get the bond money, we're not doing it.
Right.
Well, then we'll deal with a deteriorating bridge for a few more years until we gotta barricade it off.
Yeah.
But I think right now, you know, if we get the bond money, it should be a category in that gray area as an option to take care of, because it's something that needs to get done. I'm not a fan of kicking it down the road. I mean, if we're gonna kick it down the road, then shut it down and barricade it off and tear it out. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think we need to.
What bridge are you referring to?
Cornerstone Bridge.
By the little park.
Off of Spirit Court,
Oh,
the one that had all the sheds locked underneath it.
And garden tractors.
So,
Yeah.
One of the
if I'm gathering the consensus, you wanna see the bridge money included here, you wanna see land acquisition and physical improvement for the rear access to Onawani Heights. And then, do you wanna see the 400,000 for those roads, or do you wanna take the 300 from that 400? Did that make sense the way that I asked that?
I was thinking if we have the bond, we can pull that out of the bond.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what we're looking
The
at.
road
If we don't
bridge.
have the bond, it's gonna limit in how we look at a lot of things.
Sure.
Well, but to your answer there, if we don't get the bond, we're doing liquid fuels only.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's as simple as it
Right.
gets.
Okay.
If we get the bond, then yes, then under the bond, capital improvement would be the road and the bridge.
Yeah,
And the
Because-
roads are still budgeted this way, but,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
that's what it calls for, some
Right.
bond money. If we
Correct.
get no bond money, there's
Correct.
no extras.
Yep. So I will change this sheet to reflect the 400 for some bond money, the 300 for land acquisition and physical improvement for rear access to Onawani Heights, the 500 for Cornerstone Bridge. Are you okay with, sorry,
So the 500 from what Tom had said is the Taj Mahal Bridge. He's looked at three
300
options.
to 500.
So, right, we have a window of these options here that we can pick from. So right now, the 500 is the worst case scenario. So I'm okay, it's more conservative using that number, that's fine. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to spend that money to do
Absolutely.
that project. It
Yeah.
might cost $300,000,
yeah.
so.
There are three different costs, I think.
And I think that's one of the
And
benefits.
he's still
sorry.
looking at options as far as I know.
Yes, yeah. I think that's one of the benefits of your capital expense fund being built this way, because these funds are dedicated to capital versus if you made that savings in the general fund, it can go into your uncommitted fund balance and not come back out for capital. So I think what you're describing is spot on from how I'm understanding it.
Mhm.
So which account number are you using for all of that?
So I gotta check what bridge construction will be under DCED code. Right now, I would stick it in water and flood control, 446.
No, roads and bridges, 438.
Where do you see roads and bridges?
438.
438.
There's a page one,
Okay.
438.
Or highway construction.
You know DCED better than I do, man.
Okay, so which one are you?
So if you go to page 5, capital
Yeah.
expense fund,
Mhm.
the 500K for the bridge at Cornerstone is likely gonna be 438.
There is no
It'll
438
get
on
added
page
in.
5.
Yeah, so that would get added
It would
in.
get added.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, so you're adding a 438.
yep,
Okay, because it's a little confusing, because you have a 438 on page 1, but you don't have it on page 5.
yeah. So that's the fund-based accounting, is because this is a brand-new account. I was only reflecting what I knew we were gonna be doing,
Yeah,
and
okay.
that was my
'Cause that's
mistake to not
account list.
include it.
Because that's like
Well, this
a
is,
recap of the
Yeah.
capital,
But-
but you listed them so it's not there.
Yeah,
All right.
this is without the bond. This general fund is without the bond number. This page 5 is with $4.8 million bond proceeds.
Yeah.
That's why they different.
well, so I think we're on the same page. The way that I would say it, though, is that bonds in this construction of the budget don't ever go into the general fund.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
we're on the
correct,
same
correct,
page.
right,
Yeah.
right. But that's why that's not carried over one year.
Correct, correct, yeah. So you'll see a 438, which shows the 500K for the bridge. You'll see the highway construction decrease to 400 plus, I'm shooting from the hip right now, I'll check with Tom.
Sure.
Plus about $150,000 for the road. And then land acquisition, which I'm gonna have to check, I think land acquisition has its own account.
That's fine.
The balance of that 300K, so 150,000. Repair of equipment is also included there. If memory serves me, I think what's proposed in that is the pickup truck that needs to be replaced, the 2005. And I think also it's the mini excavator, because we're concerned with how we use the mini excavator for leaf, brush collection, and also drain replacement, that we are getting close to exceeding the ability of the vehicle to actually,
It's used every day, and
it's a little bit small.
well, and it's not really, it's not a piece of equipment made to be used every day. That's like getting a compact tractor, the bucket, and trying to farm 100 acres with it. It's just not gonna happen.
So you're talking about account 437 for that?
Mm.
Okay.
Are there concerns with that, or how I've reflected, I think, what you guys are looking for?
I think we're on the same, at least I think we're on the same page.
And that way the paint machine would go also.
So the paint machine is to realize the enhanced safety lines
Right.
and the new type of paint that can be increasingly reflective. The idea, and this is gonna be for future boards and for future administrators to figure out, the idea with that is we can be on a schedule to repaint lines every few years. So in effect, and in theory, I'll let Keith disagree with me if he feels differently about this, but every third year, we could repaint every line in the township. So if you're continually doing that with the enhanced reflectivity paint, ideally, you could realize greater safety.
Correct, absolutely.
And which account number is that?
That would be under 437, but it's not proposed for 24.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
But that is one of the equipment pieces listed in the bond proceeds.
Right, so it could be in 2025,
Yeah,
26.
and it's a it is relatively speaking an inexpensive piece of equipment.
About how much?
What's budgeted was there with 30,000. We actually got a quote for 18, I think, 18,000. So, you know,
Could we use it, in theory, could we use that at other municipalities to
yes.
generate revenue.
Okay, so our intermunicipal agreements that exist right now have limited exchange methodologies.
Financial.
Yes. And part of the philosophy, especially when we did one with Perry and Onawani, was to make sure that money was not being exchanged at all.
Well, I'm not necessarily talking about them, but if like Byrne Township or something says,
Yeah.
hey, you can, you know.
You could absolutely do it. I will say, from my experience at Brecknock, we had a line painter that we shared with Robinson Township. And we found that because there were guys at because there were guys at Brecknock who were skilled with maintaining it well, when we got it back, there was additional wear and tear from one party more than another. I'm trying not to name names, but you get what I'm saying.
Some people know how to do
Yeah,
it better,
yeah.
clean it up.
Right.
Now, we do have a dedicated mechanic, so I think that's a completely legitimate use of it.
Well, even if we sent
One guy to sit
one
on
guy
it,
with it
Yeah.
one of their
to
guys. drives around.
supervise the operation, I think that would probably preserve our investment.
That's a hypothetical theory down the road, we're not there yet, but just.
I think the
thought.
answer to your question is yes.
All right.
I overly complicated it.
No, you're fine.
I'm in the habit of doing it.
Rules and.
Well, no, but I mean, that can't be the experience with anything when, on rental equipment. You can
Yeah.
have people that take care of it, return it in this at least a good, if not better condition than when they received it. And you have other people that
Don't care.
trash it sometimes, and then you've got either a repair bill or a lot of work to clean it up and get it to where it is.
Yeah. Are you guys comfortable with road work?
I
Okay,
think so.
so support for volunteer fire company is next. I know Danny is here. I'm not sure if he wants to add anything to what I'll say, but we met with Danny, and generally speaking, where the fire company's needs are increasing for aging equipment, that is aging past insurance recommendations, as well as the ability to retain and recruit new volunteers through incentive programs, there's a desire to move the township to one full mill of fire tax. In our conversations, we felt that that was not feasible this year to achieve. And so what we're proposing is a 0.25 mil increase. That would take the fire tax to a total of 0.6 mils. I think one of the things that I'll just say too is part of our objective with assisting the fire company with these resources is to ensure that the fire company is well operated and maintained as a volunteer company, because if the township would have to bring in that service for paid drivers, firefighters, personnel in general, the costs would be far greater than this. So this is spending a little money now to save a lot of money later. I hope I didn't besmirch you guys at all with that.
We've got a tremendous fire company, we've got a tremendous police department, we've got a great ambulance corps, and all of them are struggling right now. All of them are struggling because equipment is going through the roof, just like when we go for our trucks. With the fire company, they're volunteers, every one of them. So when they've got a, they spend their time to raise funds, they spend their time to train, they spend their time to respond to calls, and then they clean up the trucks after their calls. There's nobody there to clean the trucks up after the call and say, hey, listen, we'll take care of that. And I'll tell you, if we end up with a paid fire department, you've got minimum manning that you have to put onto a piece of apparatus. So if you look at our police budget, you can probably triple it, and that's gonna be around where the cost for a fire company would be when we have to pay them. They're mandated under Act 111, which is state law. And I'll tell you what, we have a tremendous chief in Danny. He's got a tremendous staff, and I'll tell you what, my hat's off to him. I was a fire chief. I was a police chief. I ran on an ambulance and a paramedic unit. But I tell you what, this fire department is trained better than a lot of fire companies throughout the country. So I am all about public safety for our volunteers and our police and our EMS. There's no way that I'll ever turn my back on that. I don't know that I have thus far, I sure hope I haven't. But I back these guys up tremendously. The equipment they choose to replace benefits us all. They just got their new aerial, that's gonna benefit us all. They need a new pumper, that's so our insurance rates don't go up, because everything falls under what they call an ISO rating. that's insurance services. If you don't have the right equipment, or the right manpower, or the right training, our insurance rates go through the roof. And you're gonna pay that forever, because they very seldom lower it. Insurance companies don't have a habit of doing that. They raise, that's their objective. So I think it's I don't have any argument with that whatsoever. That's a gimme for what we're dealing with.
Yeah, I also heard that sometimes it takes
Yes.
up to 2 years to get some of these fire.
Those totals
It
are
does.
correct
So
elsewhere.
much.
4 years now. 4 years on fire and rescue, and it does take quite some time.
Yeah. How many years did you say?
4 years now.
Oh, 4 years?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's.
Oh, my.
and you've gotta spec them out. And
That's-
and it
and
takes
that's not
That's
easy.
a good.
a lot of time to spec a truck out.
Eric did point out there is an error on this slide. I'm double checking to make sure that it's not an actual error with the finances. I'm just double checking, but that should be 0.65 mils, because the current millage
Right.
is 0.4. So
Yeah.
I didn't drink any coffee today, so.
What was the ultimate goal to get to?
1 mil.
1 mil. And that's of course a decision that the board gets to make.
Sure.
That's not a Hunter decision.
But if you did the math again to what we currently pay, but on an average per month, it's like $4, right? Ballpark?
Yep. Let me do that. So the average home in Maidencreek Township is assessed at $118,467. Multiply that by 0.0004, which is 0.4 mils, is $47.38.68, so 39 cents. Over 12 is $3.95 every month.
And at the mill, it would be,
At a mill, give me 1 second. A mill would be $118.47 per household per year, and monthly, that would be $9.87.
Can't even start the truck.
yeah, exactly.
That's
Average.
Is that a mill is how much a year?
118,
118,
47 cents.
40 cents, okay.
Yeah. That is based on the average, so half will be lower, half will be higher.
Mhm.
I will say that I did double check this today, and you'll see it in a later slide. If you double that, that is the 95th percentile of homes. Basically what that means is 95% of everybody in the township is below that. There's only extenuating circumstances to take your home's assessment beyond doubling 118,000, which is $236,934. Now, that's not market value, because market value, you know, we see homes, I don't know if you can buy a home in Maidencreek Township for $236,934.
I'm sure you could, just not many.
Yeah,
But
must
the
have gone from 1 to 9.
The assessed value is based on the last county reassessment, which was done in 1994, I believe.
Yeah, it's been about 30 years.
Yeah. So we're basing this estimate on economics from 30 years ago.
Well, you have a common level ratio though too, so
Yes.
there's adjustments made, so even if the reassessment hasn't been done, they
Yeah.
go back and everybody's at that same level, so,
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't
It's-
automatically increase the rate.
well, no, but it's supposed to reflect the value,
Yes.
so it's
So,
all based
right.
on that standard from that time, and like I said, they can use the common level ratio to use the market value and calculate that.
Mhm.
Reassessments are expensive, so it's that time.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, what's a cup of coffee at Starbucks these days?
Depends on what you get.
I would say a large coffee.
Large coffee, probably $7
$7 yeah.
without tax.
And I guess that's
You
why.
can't buy bubble gum anymore for that kind of.
How about a rug?
Well, I know we got a few things up here.
That's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not-
right now, I am proof positive that we do. We as,
Just on a comment, I believe that you're discussing this, you might as well just put it at the mill, because what you're talking about, and I had a discussion with him at the last meeting, I was in volunteers for a long time.
yeah,
what they guys do, they need the support, and that little bit amount of money is nothing. You could go to the local bar and buy a beer for $9.
Yeah.
Alright, so I mean, that's a no-brainer. That's just my comment.
So I got kids, I can spend $100 like that at Knoebel buying stupid stuffed animals.
All right, well,
I have
let's
no
keep
problem
moving
with
on
doing
this.
that, raising it to
I'm-
a mill.
And that's why I brought it up. I wanted to kind of actualize it down to a dollar amount so we could understand fully.
That's
And
reasonable and it's for an effort that is
I
necessary.
agree, and I hate doing it to begin with, but again, it goes back to my earlier statement that there's been years and years and years of disservice done to Maidencreek. And I'm not saying we catch up on it all right now, you can't do that, you can't climb the mountain in one day, but, you know, if we can chip away at it.
By the way, what is your name?
Me,
Yeah,
Allison,
Allison, okay, sorry about that.
I think the public has a misconception on paying the tax for the fire company. They say, I already paid taxes for my fire company, but they don't realize how little that tax is, and it does nothing for them.
No.
So if you would kind of explain that in a flyer when you send something
Maybe
out.
at newsletter time, that
Yeah.
would be an excellent.
To realize how little that of their tax money goes to the fire company,
Mhm.
maybe someone would say, yeah, maybe I should give a little bit more this year.
Right,
Maybe I should fill out that donation card and give it to them.
Right.
And not accidentally put it someplace.
Hey, for $10, I hope they turn their truck on and come to my house.
Yeah, oh yeah, believe me, it's been to my house, and I made sure I paid my share for it, because I want them to show up the next time I need them.
and I know they always will, that's
Yeah.
our dedicated firefighters,
Uh-huh.
our dedicated police, look at Officer Toro standing there. I mean, we've got dedication in this township like people don't understand.
Mhm.
I met him when I was just a banker before I was an attorney, and he was a cop here in Maidencreek. So I can tell you, that's been quite some time as well. He's been here.
I met him when, we won't go there.
I was surprised to see your face tonight. It's good.
So I guess is that,
But yeah, I think that would help
Let me,
the public to,
Perceive it better.
yeah, and when the donation letter comes, send something.
Yeah, we'll be doing a newsletter again anyway, so that'd be an excellent time to, and also ask for volunteers. So,
I'm just trying to make sure the tax calculation is correct here. Oh, why do I have to make these so complicated sometimes?
exactly why.
I want it to be right.
Because the state gave you all kind of numbers here to add up. See, Donna?
Yes, that is correct. So that 325 is correct. So it was just that it should have been 0.65, not 0.6.
Okay.
so you're not talking,
You're not talking big dollars.
we're not talking a huge increase on it to make it from 0.65 to 1.
You're talking at a coffee cup.
No.
I'm saying the millage number is not,
Yeah.
we're not rocking the world, we're not coming out and saying, hey, you know, they want 1.5 or 2.
Yeah.
I don't think you're rocking the world.
So you're gonna make those changes.
I will make that change to 1 mil.
Yeah.
You okay with that?
No, I think that, you know, a gradual increase, if there's gonna be an increase, is more appropriate, because you're talking about adding recycling cost or fee, you're talking about increasing the base amount, by whatever number that would be, so.
So, it would be a 0.6 mil increase, and that would take your annual revenue to $492,534.69. So that 301 property taxes, where you see the 324 number, that would be the 492 now.
And what number is that again?
So if you look on fire tax funds, which is
Which
page 2,
page?
at the top of the sheet, there's 301 property taxes. That says 324,000.
Yeah.
That would now change to 492. .53469.
I guess I'm kind of confused though.
Sure.
Hang on a second. We want to get to 1 mil,
Yes,
right?
you have .4 right now.
I thought we have .65.
No.
.65.
Oh, is where we want to
was
get to. Oh, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
that was,
Okay.
that was what the
I'm sorry, I had the number.
.25. That's all right.
That's why I was saying it's not that much of a jump, because it's only .35, and when you threw that number out, I'm like, what are you talking about?
Well, in
Okay,
retrospect,
I got you.
.4 isn't even up there, so
Right.
that would have
That's
made
my
it
fault.
clear if I included that.
Understood.
Yeah.
So, give me that number again, you said 4,
So it's a .6 mil increase, and that increase would take the annual revenue to $492,534.69. And that's on page 2 again.
So then where would be the items that money would actually be spent on? Do we have that listed?
You have a reflection here of what the previous year's history has been, so you can see that.
I do, but
Yeah.
with this proposed increase.
I guess I would have to kind of see, Danny, are there intentions you would have with those funds in '24? Or would you allow that to build for the down payment of additional vehicles in future years?
Well, we're gonna need $250,000 for new air packs
Okay.
in '25.
In '25, okay. So by that, if you paid the entire amount out of here, and that would be under 411, that would go to 250,000. So I'm doing back of the hand numbers. So where you see a $14,000 surplus, that would turn into a $160,000 one. You add that to your 492,534, you're getting about $650,000. So then subtract from 250,000, you've got 400K left. Did I do my math right? Yeah, you've got 400K left. That 400,000 would be dedicated to those residuals. And I think you guys use $100,000 of township funds for debt right now?
Well, our loan payments alone right now are $110,000.
Okay.
And that doesn't include the electric, the phone and all that. So
Sure.
it's probably closer to 150.
Okay. So you're looking at maintaining a cash balance for them to be able to use for future equipment, because I know you also have a vehicle replacement that's gonna have to happen soon for the
The
99.
utility unit, we're gonna start replacing that next year.
Okay,
That's $200,000. And the new engine is gonna be $1 million.
okay.
Then you got ropes and everything else that you need, so.
Yeah, well, the rope equipment, that's $45,000. You know, obviously, we got building repairs in our parking lot, the fire company's not very good either,
That's horrible.
so that's gonna be an expense coming up. Somewhere down the line, that's really bad.
That's a liability right there. So many people have fallen in that parking lot already.
So to your immediate question, Heidi, I don't know if, based on Danny's response, that there would be any changes to the funds here. It would be building up in anticipation of those in '25.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. Okay, so I will make that change.
Do you want me to move next?
Yeah, if you just wanna hit it forward one slide. Okay.
Is that it? Nope.
Well, yes,
Is
but
it?
we'll
Okay.
skip because we really already touched on that. Those are the borrowing expenses, and we
I got
did
that.
talk about that. Okay, so, that one, yeah.
Okay.
General fund millage. So what this slide shows is different millage options. There's one to decrease, maintain the same, increase at progressive numbers. The bolded one, which is that .26, you can see .0026, that's a mill, a thousandth of the number, the whole number. That is what is being recommended in the general fund budget. You can see under the December 31st fund balance for 2024, what each of those options would do to the fund balance at the end of the year. So if you decrease taxes in that first row, you would see that your fund balance would be negative $764,000, and then so on and so forth down the line. The average bill per resident is broken out there. That's based on the $118,467, which is the average residential assessment, and then average bill doubled, which you can think of truthfully as the ceiling for what a resident will pay. A lot of businesses pay, in there, and the median of the first decile, which is the top 10% of all properties in the township, is at like 208,000 or something like that. So it's that doubling of the average resident value is beyond the median of the first decile. So you are in the 95th percentile at that point.
So I have a question for you.
Sure.
So if the millage rate became 2.6 mils, which you have in bold, the average resident would be paying a bill of $385 a month for real estate taxes.
Per year.
Per year, yeah, an annual
Yeah.
basis, right?
Yes.
Because that's all you need.
That's an accurate statement, yeah.
Yeah, and then we don't have a copy of that here, do we?
If you go into the last page, cheat sheet, that's of the,
Because I don't see that exact one right in here.
well, that exact one is not going to be there because that's only on the PowerPoint.
So can we get copies of all that? Because I'd like to
Yeah,
have
I
a
can.
copy of that and some of the other ones too. You have about the road work and the fire company and all
Yeah,
that.
I'll provide the whole PowerPoint for you.
That would be good.
So, if you go to,
Yeah, I see on
Tax
page
bill
21,
current
you've got
rates.
what you call the cheat sheet with
Yeah.
people. Yeah, I understand that.
yeah, and then projected tax bill for 2.85 for general millage on the page before that, page 21, you can see that as well. It's the most recent one, so the one that you got in your email packet last week.
This one. This one.
In the effort to be thorough, I've become frustrated.
We kill a lot of trees.
But these are key PowerPoint, slides, and I think it's important. It's nice to have an actual record of it because it
This-
does give a good
yeah.
snapshot of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just trying to put together. So we got down there, you got asterisks. Includes proposed 0.65. That's what we were talking about.
Can you say that one more time?
I'm just looking at your asterisks down the bottom. So the includes proposed 0.65 mil.
Fire glasses.
Yes, so now that would have to be changed. So the average resident bill includes the fire tax. The general millage rate that you see 0.00260, that doesn't include fire tax. I didn't want to say, this is how much you pay for fire tax on one slide, then not include it on the next one.
Yeah,
to show
so
the
your
actual bill.
your 0.0026 does not include that. However, when you go
Correct.
over to December 31st, there's an asterisk there, average bill there.
Yep.
And then that does include it.
Correct. So I can give you what that number would be. Give me one moment here. $426.48. Doubled, it would be,
That's for total millage of how much?
that would be 3.6 mils, would be $426.48.
For the average resident?
Correct.
Okay.
And then doubled, it would be $852.96.
I'm just playing the number game in my head here.
Yeah.
So we're at 0.4, and we would need, so what if we went, instead of the 0.25, went 0.3 this year and 0.3 next year for the fire tax? Does it, what's the offset? Like, I mean, I know, kind of like Charlie said, just pull it off and get it done, because like I said, I'd rather have them come to my house for $10, but you know, this is gonna put a burden on some of those that have a hard time now. It's just trying to do the numbers game.
Yeah.
Well, so when you look at the school tax, because that keeps accelerating, I mean, we had this whole thing, this is a big tax bill for
They
a lot of
went
people.
1.5 mils this year. What is the school tax right now, total millage? You know?
It's 34, right?
It's
34 mils.
I don't remember, but it is listed on that last page in that sample bill.
On page 21, it's 34.11 mils,
Yeah.
which I think is the current number
It is the current number. Now,
that we were assessed in 23.
exactly. So what will it be in 24? I don't know.
No, but the history is it keeps going up, and so for the
Sure.
average person, they're paying a lot of money. I know a lot of people are paying $8,000 to $10,000
Mhm.
a year in total property tax, which includes the school property tax,
Well,
which is a huge bill.
It's 4,040.91, doubled to 8,081.82.
So if you did the 0.25 for the fire tax millage instead of the 0.6, the average resident would save $41.46 in a year, and then doubled would be $82.93.
Like I'm speaking me personally, I don't have a problem making it the one, but that's me. And, you know, I can't speak for the other residents, so that's why I'm kinda kicking this one around, but so my thought was if we did, you know, maybe we do split it up in this year and next year, but regardless, we gotta get there. There's stuff coming up, like Chief said, that we gotta take care of, and
If you split it at 0.3, would that?
well, that's what I was kinda saying, we did
Okay.
3.3 this year and 0.3 next year, but
If you did 0.3, the difference would be $35.54.
A year.
a year.
Yeah, between 24 for, yeah, the difference of what the actual rate would be.
I guess I'm back and forth in my head. I in my mind, I can't believe we're not at a mill for them, quite frankly,
Yeah.
already. But is this something, everybody's dealing with the influx of everything, you know, I get it. I drive a diesel truck.
Well, here's something to think about then too. Maybe next year it can't be 3, because if they're looking at putting a new truck on the street and it's gonna be $1 million, you know, it's not gonna be 0.3.
When was the last time we raised them
2015.
for fire tax?
Yes.
Well, that's when we put the fire tax in place, isn't it?
Yes.
So, that started it, we used to do donations.
Right, so we're kinda late to the game anyway.
We're way late to the game. I don't know, I think 1 mil is a fair assessment for the fire company.
I do too.
$35 a year is.
You know, it's just,
You know, how many people sent their donations in for that? Not a whole lot. So,
Well, I think you should also look at the bigger picture here, because I think there's some other numbers that have been thrown around today, and some things are changing, so before you come up with it should be this or should be that, I think there's some more things that need to be considered into, you know, besides, we've looked at, you know, the 5-year projections, so there's more numbers to be
Yeah.
recalculated in your spreadsheet before you, in my opinion, before you get to that point of determining the actual millage.
On that note, do you guys mind taking a break? Because I do have to use the restroom, and I don't want to be
That's fine.
missing stuff for you guys. But,
yeah,
I mean, we've been at it for 2 hours now,
That's
so maybe
fine.
just a 5-minute, 10-minute water break or something.
yeah, that'll work.
Okay.
I'm gonna pause this.
Otherwise, one of these.
Yeah, I'll just.
Oh, they're actually.
You want me to-
they're